Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett. Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Host of the Tony Kinnett Cast.
Let's get down to business.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening. Welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated. I'm wearing my tan blazer this evening because it is an evening of pointless, useless, stupid scandals while avoiding, at least as the legacy media is known to do, things that are actually serious, that deserve a lot of attention. And we will be getting to those things later on in the show because we have a series of updates on the billions of dollars that have been effectively stolen from the taxpayers of North Carolina and Georgia, as well as a couple of things that really are not passing the sniff test of voters heading in to what is now effectively an election just 1 month away. Tomorrow is the 5th. It's the end of October the 4th. So therefore, we are 1 month away from the presidential and general election here in the United States. Now, let's dig into the polls. Get right into it. According to the Real Clear polling average, which is a weighted rating of reliable polls, which means that the pollsters create algorithms based on who they think are going to vote. That means likely voters. So, for example, if they poll a group of people and the group is comprised of black individuals, Hispanic individuals, white individuals, Asian individuals, then they, based on voting trends of how many Hispanics, Asians, black and white voters they think are going to come out, will weight the rating of the polls that way. So it's kind of like a double mix in order to get out there to the average. Some pollster analysts are more reliable than others. So according to the Real Clear polling average, with that disclaimer out of the way, Trump and Harris are within 2 points of each other in every single battleground state. Trump is up 1.4 points in Arizona. In Nevada, Harris is up 1.1. It's one of the first times that she's really been above Trump in Nevada in this election cycle on many of the averages. Wisconsin, Harris is up 0.8. Michigan, 0.7. In Pennsylvania, it is a dead heat tie, 48.2 to 48.2. North Carolina, Trump is up 0.6. Georgia, up 1.5. These are as of October the 4th, but those are a correlation, really a combination of different data sets ranging from a couple of days old to weeks old. What does that mean? It means no one really has any idea where we are other than gut feelings. Everybody's got gut feelings, but this is like the irritable bowel syndrome of elections. Everyone's guts are all over the place. The smell is terrible, and it's only going to get worse from here. Speaking of getting worse from here, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, you know the guy, effectively dead. He's gone through every stage of dementia so far. He went through his initial forgetful stage, then he went through the sleepy stage, then he went through the angry stage, shaking his fists, he's angry. And now he's in the goofy stage. I mean, again, if any of you have ever cared for an individual with dementia, and I mean this with all sincerity and seriousness, you know that there is a point when an individual with dementia regresses to childhood to the point of silliness. Biden's there. So first of all, again, as though we needed reinforcing, the President of the United States has no idea what's going on. He's completely lost. Here he was yesterday, basically confused when a reporter asked him what different states suffering from Hurricane Helene needed. Get a load of this.
What do the states in the storm zone need, Mr. President?
Okay.
What do the states in the storm zone, what do they need after what you saw today?
Oh, in the storm zone?
Yes, sir.
I'm wondering what storm you're talking about.
What? I'm not sure what storm you're talking about. What other storms are... I'm sorry. Are there any other big, massive storms sweeping across the United States and delivering destruction upon tens, if not hundreds of thousands that we're all unaware of? But we all knew that. We were all aware the president is not with us or conscious. And then something snapped, and he went into full-on goofy mode today. He walks into a surprise press conference. Surprise press briefing, not on the schedule. Karine Jean-Pierre's supposed to come out and gripe at everybody like usual. And then, and by the way, you can hear the reporters like laugh in surprise. Biden enters the room and welcomes everyone to, and I kid you not, the swimming pool.
Hey, folks. My name's Joe Biden.
Welcome, Mr. President.
We've been waiting for you.
Welcome to the swimming pool.
Okay, so just a few things here. I love everyone laughing. Oh, Joe, we know you walking out in front of people. The president has been in hiding for his entire administration. We're all going to pretend and laugh and chuckle along. The president of the United States is dead. He's not there. And he walks out, and he's clearly cracking up and breaking down, and he welcomes everyone into the swimming pool. And by the way, there was like a weird fact check made later when people were making fun of this, saying, well, actually, Biden was referring to that the press area used to be the swimming pool at the White House in the 1970s, and now it's not. And that's clearly what Biden was referring to. What? What? That's a stretch. Holmes, that's a real stretch. But again, we're going to move on, because then Biden, and there's really no other way to interpret this than Biden clearly wanting Kamala to lose at this point. Every time Harris or Tim Walz try so desperately to separate Kamala as the vice president from his administration and make her some agent of change, Biden reaches a gnarled hand out of the grave, grasps her leg, and pulls her down with him. This is pretty incredible. Listen to this.
There have obviously been a number of crises that the country has been facing over the past several days, with the hurricane, with the port strike, with the situation in the Middle East. Can you talk about how your vice president, who is running for the presidency, has worked on these crises and what role she has played over the past several days?
Well, I'm in constant contact with her. She's aware we're singing from the same song sheet. She helped pass all the laws that are being employed now. She was a major player in everything we've done, including passage of legislation which we were told we could never pass.
So I'm just going to point this out very clearly. I'm pretty sure that Biden wants Harris to lose. Biden is clearly upset and angry and old and bitter and holding a grudge, like a lot of old men do. And I'm sure I will when I am that age. And in the angry, old, gnarled bitterness of a man betrayed, again, will not allow Kamala Harris to walk in as an agent of change after he was the one who picked her as his vice president. And so he's like, yeah, we do everything together. Walks on the beach. We laugh at orphans. Oh, it's great. Singing from the same song sheet. She's kind of an alto and I'm kind of in a coffin beneath the choir loft. It's great. And then at the end, one of the reporters, as he's on the way out, asks him if he's getting back into the race, if he's going to be the presidential nominee again. Here's Biden.
Have you made a decision on long-range weapons?
Do you want to reconsider dropping out of the race?
I'm back in.
And they all laugh. Get it? It's funny that he would consider being back in. Oh, wait, we all understand he's dead and he's actually the sitting president of the United States. Grand stuff. This is where things get interesting. Here's what CNN notes a few seconds later.
I do have a note, and I'm curious what you think about this. We were actually about to go live to Vice President Kamala Harris, who's speaking right now in Detroit, Michigan, and apparently she's talking about this port strike ending. She's trying to appeal to union workers, and yet you have the President of the United States come out clearly overshadowing her.
I love it. And by the way, we checked it out. Kamala took the stage in Detroit, a state in the city and a state she desperately needs to win. In a city she desperately needs to rally voters. She walks out at 2:04 p.m. Eastern Time. Biden steps into the briefing room at 2:06 p.m. Eastern. I mean, come on, that's funny. That's really great. So, what about old Kamala Harris in Detroit? What was she talking about? Well, she did try lying about the audio industry, and it was so awkward she got, no applause.
So under my plan, we will invest in the industries that built America, like steel, iron, and the great American auto industry.
Ah, yes. The great American... By the way, there's some awkward half clapter after that. And why? Well, because Kamala Harris is the leading individual pushing the ban on producing gasoline and diesel-powered vehicles in the United States, an electric vehicle mandate by 2030 or 2035. So, just saying, a lot of auto manufacturing happens in Detroit. People kind of remember that, but we'll get to that, no fooling stuff a little bit later. Then Karine Jean-Pierre walks out in front of the press and gets like really nasty because someone's talking about basically people struggling to afford food right now. And here you go.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Can you address food insecurity? The numbers are rising according to the USDA. Food insecurity numbers?
No, not right now. I'm not talking to you, sir.
Okay.
I'm just not.
Excuse me, people can't afford food. The FDA noticed that people can't afford food. I'm not talking to you. Like, oh my God, just the audacity. Oh my goodness. So then Karine Jean-Pierre does something useful with her time, like straight up lying about what FEMA funds are used for. This is probably the boldest lie I've seen from a White House press conference since the Gulf War.
Former President Trump is accusing the Biden administration of using FEMA funding to support undocumented migrants. How is the White House responding to that?
I mean, it's just categorically false. It is not true. It is a false statement. And look, the fact of the matter is, I think Washington Post fact checker did a piece, and the headline recently, just moments ago, not too long ago, and the headline was, "No, Biden did not take FEMA relief money to use on migrants, but Trump did."
Okay, fiscal year 2024 from the official website for the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Total funding available for fiscal year 2024, $650 million for the Shelter and Services Program, which is, according to the site, administered by FEMA to provide humanitarian services to non-citizen migrants following their release from DHS. Huh! $275 million in round 1 in 24, $40.87 million in round 2 of 2024. Wait a minute, that's like $340 plus $300 million to illegal migrants with FEMA. Wow, on the website for FEMA. Well, we're going to talk about how that is screwing over people in North Carolina and Georgia in just a couple of seconds. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on the Daily Signal, first on 93 WIBC.
Hammer and Knight. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. It's good to be with you. There are a lot of rumors and things flying around about what's currently going on in North Carolina, in Tennessee, in Georgia, in the regions of the country that have been so horrifically affected by Hurricane Helene. And there are a couple of updates that you need to be aware about, because if we're going to make the accusation that billions of dollars have been stolen from individuals in the hardest hit areas of the country due to these natural disasters, we better have some darn good evidence to do so, because that would make the person responsible for spending that money or taking that money from its rightful recipient. That would kind of function as a reason to get them out of office, either by impeachment or via, again, depending on the motive at hand, possibly by some type of federal arrest. That said, let's dig into the reason. So the whole context for all of this ridiculous situation that has been developing since yesterday is that the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas got up in front of the country yesterday and admitted that the Federal Emergency Management Agency was out of money and therefore wouldn't be able to afford helping anybody at all, basically from this point forward.
Despite all the proactive things that the federal government did and its response, the sentiment, according to my colleagues on the ground from people, is that the federal government is not doing enough to help. Where are they? Where is the help? What is your message to those people?
I would say the following, that we are there and we will continue to be there, and we will reach the most difficult to access locations. We are relentless in our efforts to ensure the safety and security of all.
So then he goes on, after basically giving a kind of a weird analysis of what it is that he thinks that they're doing, and says that there is not any more money for future hurricanes this year. He expects there to be hurricanes, but according to the Associated Press article transcripts from later on in said conference, he says there's no more money. It's gone. And everyone kind of looked around and said, wait a minute, there haven't exactly been a whole lot of storms so far this year. We've had years where there have been like 2 or 3 big hurricanes and you've been able to handle it. What's going on? And by the way, that's not just us saying that. Here's Mayorkas himself actually saying that the Federal Emergency Management Agency was like more than ready for hurricane season this year.
FEMA is tremendously prepared. This is what we do. This is what they do. And the key here, Rebecca, is also to make sure that the communities who are potentially impacted are prepared as well.
So I gotta ask, where did all the money go? And then again, to reiterate, according to the actual website of FEMA, the U.S. government website, hosted by the Department of Homeland Security, this is not me just making up numbers. According to fiscal year 2024 of the Shelter and Services Program, $650 million has been spent. In round 1, $275 million, round 2, $40.87 million, for a total of about $300 million. And then a special SSP additional funding of $340.9 million was allotted, making for a total of $650 million that went to financial support to non-federal entities to provide humanitarian services to non-citizen migrants following their release from the Department of Homeland Security, DHS. The money was spent on illegal migrants. And I say illegal migrants because they entered the country illegally, and then they downloaded an app, and with the click of a few buttons, then were granted magical asylum, which is not technically legal. That's not what the law states individuals are supposed to do. You're supposed to go through a port of entry. So, by the way, we probably should talk about Mayorkas changing his positions quite a bit over the last couple of years. In 2020, Alejandro Mayorkas was on the record saying that closing the southern border would be xenophobic. In 2021, he said, well, the border is secure, totally safe, everything's fine. In 2022, he said, there's no illegal immigration, it's just not happening. In 2023, he said, well, I mean, sure, illegal immigration is increasing, it's kind of going up, but it's temporary. It's just a surge right now. Remember that? Oh, it's just a temporary surge going on. And then, in February of this year, he said, well, legal immigration is good. It's helping out the workforce. It's helping out the shortage of a lot of materials are being aided by illegal immigrants in the economy. Wow. And now, in October 2024, he has admitted that illegal immigrants have been given over $1 billion of FEMA's budget. Now, look, guys, don't get mad. It's not like President Biden can just, spend millions off budget. Everyone on the left is saying, well, Congress would have to pass some special emergency measure. I mean, come on, guys. Biden doesn't have the authority to just, snap his aged fingers and say there's a humanitarian aid crisis. It's not like the president, could just snap his fingers and spend $320 million, constructing a pier off the coast of the Gaza Strip that started to sink within 6 days because he declared a humanitarian aid crisis. I mean, it's not like the president can just give his transportation secretary, Pete Buttigieg, $5 billion and then only build 7 or 8 electric vehicle charging stations with that. Oh. It's not like we've given $54 billion in humanitarian aid to other nations' citizens over the last 3 years, or $6 billion to a nation openly targeting U.S. citizens. I mean, guys, come on now. It's not like it would be far cheaper and faster to take some of the Department of Transportation budget that wasn't spent on the 7 or 8 electric vehicle charging stations and, pave a road or relay some foundations for a small North Carolina town that is lived in by taxpayers, that was completely washed away by the massive storm like, Hurricane Helene. They absolutely can do that. And then we actually get to the rescue and aid operation. So a lot of other individuals are stepping in where FEMA has failed to do so. I saw this, by the way, in person on the ground in Maui. Tim Kennedy, my colleague from the Daily Signal, and I were boots on the ground in Maui, watching civilians continue to bring in aid because the federal government did not even send a single fireboat from Pearl Harbor, which was less than 50 miles away. If you're standing in the right place on Maui, you can see Pearl Harbor from the island of Maui. Nothing. And then FEMA ended up kicking a lot of people out of hotels in Lahaina, including the Grand Wailea, the nicest hotels in Maui. People who were recently homeless due to the fires were kicked out of the hotels. And now we're sloughed onto the streets so that FEMA agents could stay in the hotel. Tim Kennedy and I confirmed that. We walked through that hotel's parking garage and confirmed that the entire parking garage was filled with federally stamped vehicles, written on it with yellow paint marker. Now the same things, according to a whistleblower talking to the oversight committee, is saying the same stuff. FEMA is restricting people from moving into airspace, and this was proven today. This is very wild stuff. Secretary Pete Buttigieg got out because he's very upset people are bad-mouthing FEMA and said, no one is shutting down the airspace and FAA doesn't block legitimate rescue and recovery flights. If you're encountering a problem, give me a call. And Elon Musk responded, there are hundreds of reports of FEMA and FAA agents blocking flights. This literally just happened. He said, look, I'll follow you. DM me the number to give you a call. And then radio silence. Pete did nothing. And then Elon says, look, I have a helicopter waiting to land to deliver critical supplies right now. What's the number to call? Nothing. And to this minute, right now on the air, still nothing. It is a disgrace what the Federal Emergency Management Agency has done to Americans in this country over the last couple of years. Because President Biden and Kamala Harris wanted to play super migrant transportation tycoon instead of actually using FEMA to do what FEMA's literal job states it is to do. It is supposed to be the Emergency Management Agency. They can't manage a dang thing unless it's a truckload, a busload, or a plane load of migrants flying into this country illegal. And oh yeah, they might be convicted felons. Who knows until they get here? We're going to talk about a few of the things Americans aren't fooled by just a second from now. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Be back in a second.
I'm John Morgan.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
So right now, in the middle of this nightmare, and by the way, I want to make it clear, this is a nightmare for thousands, if not tens of thousands of Americans right now living in these disaster areas. There are still a lot of Americans that are struggling under the weight of everything else, from the rampant crime to the high inflation to the transportation costs, all the way to the extreme regulatory infrastructure and, of course, the stress of the wars springing up around the globe. And though the Biden administration is like trying to take some victory laps right now, President Biden today, I think, broke into some very weird stutters, trying to tell people that actually his administration's economy was like amazing or something. Yeah, people ain't buying it. There are just a couple of things that a month from the election are not fooling the average voter. I don't really think there are many undecided voters at this point as like independents who don't know who they're going to vote for. I think that class of individuals has gotten much smaller in recent years anyway than a lot of people lead on. I think that this election is going to come down to not the bases on either side, the progressive base and the Democrat side, or the conservative or the populist base on the Republican side of the aisle. I think that it's probably going to be more due to the two groups of moderates in both parties. The moderate Democrats, who include large swaths of the 90s labor Democrats, who the left has largely abandoned. And then on the right, a lot of moderate Republicans who include a couple of kind of George Bushian style neoconservatives who don't really fit in with conservatives or populists. How many of those individuals actually come out to vote and make an effort to support any kind of a candidate at all? That's going to decide the election. And it is those voters who make decisions to come out to vote or not, or to leave the president's space blank or not, based on what it is that they are told and what it is that they feel in the present economy, society, cultural framework, how the country's functioning at present. So, one of the things that a lot of these voters have been told in the last couple of days that they are not buying is that President Biden is somehow a big hero, and Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary, like suddenly got the International Longshoremen's Association, the dock workers union, to back down and like delay their strike until January 15th. Oh man, that's Pete Buttigieg. That there were reports that they were in conversations at 5:30 in the morning, and that's why they worked all day and they got that deal. No, that ain't the reason why. And by the way, there are also a lot of people who are suggesting that the union workers all got universally mad because it was exposed that Harold Daggett, the guy who said that he would cripple the whole country, and his two sons, Dennis and John, are receiving huge, big buxo salaries. $600,000 a year for Harold, $250,000 for Dennis, and $260,000 for John. And they all live in big, massive, ugly McMansions. These things are gross, but they do live in New Jersey. So, I mean, you know, that it's a nice house, but you live in New Jersey and it kind of cancels out. A lot of people are saying that all of the workers are, you know, oh, that's why the whole thing fell apart. No, the strike is still set for the 15th. They did take a temporary deal, like a slight pay increase at the moment, in order to keep the ports running. I'm sorry, that's not what actually broke the strike. I know there are a lot of people who truly believe that it's one of those two things. It's not. Yesterday, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida made two key announcements. Announcement number one was that he would be activating the Florida National Guard to provide assistance to other states who needed humanitarian help. And then number two, that he would be sending the Florida National Guard to keep Florida ports safe, and to, in places where the Florida ports were a product of the strike, they were closed because of the strike, that he would order the National Guard of Florida to run those ports as best they could, and told shipping container ships that if they wanted to dock in Florida instead of up in Canada near Halifax or down in Mexico near Tampico, then that would be totally fine, and they should come do that. And then the idea of 16 ports, 4 ports which really could handle heavy tonnage, 1 port which could handle a very specific shipping crate size that could really ease a lot of the shipping issues in the United States. And after also, I'm sorry, I know this is going to bug a lot of tradesmen, but it's really not hard to learn how to operate the longshoreman trade cranes. I know that a lot of people have been, you know, overinflating the importance of how skilled longshoreman trades are. Trades are no joke. They do take training and skill, but the idea that, you know, oh man, in the 1980s when Reagan told all of the flight control tower individuals, the air traffic control union workers, to get lost because they were on strike, and then he replaced them with military individuals, they learned the job just fine. Anyone is replaceable at any time. We found this out during COVID. And that poking a very large hole in the dam that was the striking union, basically took out what was already kind of a teetering public opinion. A lot of people were angry because this was going to seriously hurt the survivors of Hurricane Helene. They were already swaying. DeSantis took the Louisville Slugger, aimed right at the knees, and finished him off. Because a dam is only useful if it holds water. Once you poke a big enough hole in the dam becomes fairly irrelevant. And so they kind of broke down and pushed the strike back because they were humiliated. And by the way, that also humiliates President Biden as well. A couple of other things here. The media is also ignoring a very big story that Doug Emhoff, the second gentleman, Kamala Harris' husband, apparently slapped an ex-lover of his. And the reason that I point that out, it's kind of funny the media are ignoring this, is because, hey, remember the Hunter Biden story that they all tried to cover up the last election? Oh, we heard Kamala Harris' husband going around smacking women. There you go. That's quite the allegation. And you say, well, Tony, it's just an allegation. All we have is either hearsay or circumstantial evidence or maybe an old police report. Well, yeah, but I'm sorry. Remember when like one lady came out and offered very weird circumstantial evidence that kind of contradicted itself 4 times, that Donald Trump may have done something and then didn't do something and then did do something and all that? The media ran that story like it's gospel. Oh, but all of a sudden, oh no, he's on the other side of the aisle. Well, you know, maybe we don't actually believe all women. Yeah, voters see right through that. Last but not least, I can't help but share this one. Kamala Harris this evening. I got this clip right before the show. Special thanks to Greg Price, who does a phenomenal job of uploading some of the latest clips from various rallies and goings on. Kamala Harris at a rally this evening, the teleprompter shut off, and she absolutely just went brain dead. And you can actually, if you're watching the live stream, you can see it, but listening to the audio, you can hear the moment the teleprompter shuts off, and her brain just fizzles like an old television right after you turn it off. Check it out.
Remember his number? 32. Today we got 32 days until the election.
There it is. Click.
So 32 days. 32 days. Okay, we got some business to do. All right. 32 days. And we know we will do it.
She goes on for that. She goes on like that for like another 30 seconds before they get the teleprompter back up. As a former teacher, I got to tell you that there is a moment we know when students are padding out time for a presentation they didn't actually do. And they're like, the Civil War is a war that was fought in the United States a long time ago. War is bad. Webster's dictionary defines the Civil War as just like padding out for time. I mean, that's Kamala. That's a grown woman who was a very serious member of the California state political function and then became a U.S. senator and is currently the vice president of the United States, and she cannot speak unless someone is holding up the words in front of her. Guys, it ain't fooling anybody. I mean, you came, you did your joy and your vibes and your brat, and it was all great. We had a good time. But I'm telling you, if you think this is going to carry you strongly through and it's going to be some kind of a blowout, I don't know about that. We're going to go to some mail time up next. A lot of questions to dig into, and some of them are silly questions. Some of them are okay. Stick around. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on the Daily Signal and 93 WIBC.
1 in 6 seniors faces the threat of hunger, and millions more live in isolation.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. It's good to be with you because it is, it's my particular favorite time of the weekly program. It's when individuals from around, I love that I'm explaining how mail time works, at least for us. There are a lot of segments and a lot of shows that do various, like viewer response style segments. And, some of them are really good. Some of them are not so good. I've been asked if I would be willing to do kind of a voice message kind of a situation. And I've thought about it a couple of times. But honestly, I'm kind of terrified of what you guys would send in. A live call session on the air. I really don't want to give Allison the heart attack that hovering her hand over the censor button to dump the lovely slurs that might come over the air would inevitably bring. So with that said, you can submit a question either in the chats on social media, via a DM, or over at TonyKinnett.com. We have a place to send them in. We've been getting some really interesting questions. So, without further ado, it's time for some mail time. Mail time. Mail time. Question number 1 from Eric. Now that it's a few days after the VP debate, do you think it made a difference to voters? Yes, but not in the way that people think a debate usually means something to voters. A lot of people were going into this debate kind of expecting to see Walz prove Vance was weird. If you were just watching the debate as someone who normally isn't interested in American politics, you've been told for the last couple of months that J.D. Vance was some very weird, creepy dude who was like some knuckle-dragging oaf that awkwardly moans from the basement. And instead, that turned out to be Tim Walz, who kind of gave off the vibe of a very nervous mom who's like got everything in the house burning and ruined at the same time. I've seen that look before. I think I've had that look before when I've had like no sleep, and also I had probably just dumped a bucket of paint on the floor. So having an absolute crisis on stage, Tim Walz, J.D. Vance did a masterful job. What I think it did was normalize the Trump ticket, which is very good for getting moderate Republicans to end up voting Trump Vance. And it was disastrous for all of the people who wanted to claim that, again, it's a bad thing if you vote for Trump. I think that's really what ended up coming out of the debate. This next question is from a guy named Merck, and he says, which pistol grip do you use? So I'm assuming that you're not talking about like what form the plastic is, but how I actually hold the pistol. There are a lot of different ways that you can hold the pistol. Like the traditional hand cupped in the other hand, that's no longer a good thing. You really shouldn't do that. I use the one thumb in front of the other grip. So I hold it, and then the second hand kind of cups under the trigger guard, and then the left thumb runs along the left side of the undermount right under the barrel. That gives me what I feel is kind of the best control against recoil when I'm out practicing. I hope that's the question you were asking. If you're talking about like what kind of a pistol grip do I use, I don't put a lot of tape and rubber and crap on it, if that's what you're wondering. Maybe I should. I don't know. This next question is from Lynn. She says, when you're writing the show, do you script it out? The answer to that question is no. In front of me at this present time is a little tiny screen right below the camera, and the little tiny screen has on it what the shot looks like. So if something goes wrong or there's something on the shelves that shouldn't be, which, when you have kids, you never know what can be left on the shelves, I can see it. That also lets me know if I've actually gone to break like I'm supposed to, or when we're coming back. It's kind of useful to have. I don't usually script things out. I do on this computer have like my outline, which is a lot how I taught in the classroom. I would just write out like kind of the general thought that I wanted to say, and I'd go into detail. I think it's good for two reasons. Number one, it actually makes me research the topic, because if I don't understand a topic and I just go prattling on about something I don't know, it's going to be instantly apparent to you guys. Number two, there are times when there are sources or things that, for example, like the FEMA website this evening, I can have it right here and I can read it. And for those of you that are listening via the radio and the syndication network, you don't usually notice me looking anywhere because if you can see me through your radio, you probably need to call a therapist. But for those that are watching the live stream, that's kind of the reason why. This next question is by I actually don't know how this is supposed to be pronounced. There's a lot of letters and numbers, which is usually kind of a red flag for questions to answer. And that is, do you have any plans to join a network anytime soon? I guess you think of it like a TV network anytime soon. No, I like doing this. This is fun. I get to do some investigative column work. I get to do this stuff in the evening, give you guys kind of all of the updates that we have, and that's kind of a blast. I don't know. Maybe if an opportunity comes up, we'll talk about it. I don't know. Contact my agents. Thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you on Monday. We are now within a month of the election. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, syndicated to 93 WIBC and others.
Okay, close your mouth and take a deep breath.